Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Maretta from PNW Bettas, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how I redid the flooring in my fish room. This project was a huge undertaking, but I really think the results are going to speak for themselves, so stick around and see what I did and how this project all turned out. The video that you're watching right here is a time-lapse of us starting to move everything out of the fish room. And I say starting to because this process actually took 2 days and many hours to complete, as there was a lot of stuff in this space. But obviously, in order to be able to redo the flooring, we first have to make sure that there's nothing on the floor. So that involved moving everything out of this room. And I have a lot of tanks, so this was no easy task. It might also be helpful to just understand a little bit of background as to why we're even doing this project. Some of you guys may or may not already know this, but I actually rent, so this is not a house that I own, so it is a little bit funky doing a flooring project in a space that you don't actually own, since this is like home renovations. But this is just something I discussed with my landlord because she also agreed that the carpet is really gross, especially for a room that has a lot of fish tanks in it, but also for after we leave as well. This is a converted garage, so just having this kind of brown flooring in here doesn't really make it very nice. So for when the next tenants move in, she does want to have something a little bit nicer down. So the way this all worked out is I did the labor and my landlord paid for materials. So moving on to more of the project, once we moved all of the stuff out of the fish room, we began pulling up the carpets as well as all the stuff that kind of goes along with carpet. So the carpet foam and those little wooden strips with nails all around the edges. My dad actually came down and stayed with me for a couple days to help work on this project, and so that was super helpful. And this is the part of the project where he really took charge, since he really likes ripping stuff up and just doing that kind of work. After removing all the carpet and the carpet foam, we found this nice layer of glue that went all the way around the edge of the room, and this is because the subfloor is cement, so instead of trying to nail into it, they ended up gluing down the carpet foam. But this definitely made for quite a hassle trying to remove because it was really stuck on there, so we had to chisel it all off. That being said, overall the subfloor was actually in really good shape and didn't really have any weird divots or grooves that we had to go ahead and patch. We then went around the room with a shop vac to ensure that there was no leftover dust on the floor, because the next step is going to be sealing the cement. Now admittedly, this part of the project probably wasn't necessary, but it's something that my landlord wanted done just because this room does have so much water in it and because it is a converted garage. So before we actually started to lay down the sealant, we did tape around the edges just to make sure that we didn't get any of this latexy stuff onto the baseboard. And then basically what we're doing here is just going ahead and rollering down a layer of Drylock. This just waterproofs the cement and will prevent any moisture from seeping up through the floor or also damaging the concrete if there is a large spill in the room and it somehow seeps through the also waterproof flooring. But again, if this were my own house, I probably would have skipped this step just because the flooring that we did choose is totally waterproof and we are using an underlayment that is another layer of moisture barrier. To properly do the dry lock, we had to do 2 coats, allowing 2 to 3 hours of dry time between coats. And for that massive shelf that we ended up leaving in the room, we just moved it to the other side and did the other coat. Speaking of waterproofing, we are going to add an underlayment. This is just another moisture barrier as well as a little bit of an evening layer between the flooring and the cement subfloor. Now we're about to have a massive time jump as the flooring is basically done in this next clip. I didn't film a lot of the actual install because it was really frustrating, but this is kind of what it looked like after we did most of the flooring. We chose this nice kind of gray toned vinyl flooring, which is also waterproof, and the install method was click and lock. Now admittedly, I'm not the hugest fan of the whole gray and white scheme that goes in a lot of rental houses. If it were my house, I probably would have picked something a little more unique, but for the sake of this project, I did want to pick something that went along with the other flooring that was already in other parts of this house. Most of the flooring we installed and were able to cut just by scoring and snapping, but this was the one place where we actually had to use a circular saw and cut out these kind of thin pieces to go right along that last edge. And we of course have these nice spacers down on the ends just to make sure that everything is a good distance from the baseboard, because this is a type of floating floor, and during the summer it might expand and you want to make sure that it has room to kind of fluctuate a little bit. I also have some goofy little clips of my cats exploring the workspace because they're normally not allowed in this room, so they were super curious to see what was going on. I just don't let them roam around when there's a bunch of fish tanks in here in the worry that they might knock something over or mess up something. So this right here is one of my 2 cats, and her name is Pumpkin. After all the flooring was installed, we had to finish off this room with some quarter round. So while there already is some baseboard, we just added a little bit of quarter round around the entire room to kind of hide that gap where the floating floor doesn't go all the way to the wall. For the installation of the quarter round, we used a really sticky, strong, waterproof adhesive, and this is just going to prevent any water from seeping around those edges. Now the very last step is repainting a couple baseboards. This room was a little bit funky, as whoever redid this room last time only ended up painting 2 out of 4 of the baseboards in this room, so I just took some white paint that I had that matched the quarter round, and I just went ahead and repainted the 2 that were still brown. It took me a couple coats to cover the old brown baseboards, but I think the end result is a really nice cohesive look, and it does kind of help brighten up the room a little bit. This is what the room looked like with the flooring completely done. Along with being functional, I really want this new and improved space to also look really nice and just be a really nice place to work in. So I've added some really cute shelves and some hanging plants, and I did change the layout of the fish room a little bit. I think this space has come a long way, and I'm really excited for future projects.